It is hard to reject or disregard the power that your presence carries at this time. You have emerged as the new Grim Reaper on the streets. When you enter into a room, everything changes. Once you make a choice, it is irrevocable. When you announce something to be completed, it is done. This is not about destroying actual items. Rather, it is about your absolute command over what lives and dies wherever in your world. You've reached the stage when your choice is definitive and cannot be modified for any reason. People are aware of the shift in energy that happens when you enter their area because they sense it as you walk by. They're aware of this. If you chose to cross you will face unavoidable consequences. When it comes to dealing with a new Reaper, there is no danger. Rather, it is the natural sequence of events. Your deeds, irrevocable. Your choices are indisputable, and your authority cannot be challenged. You are not picked by accident or chance. Rather, it is due to the absolute requirement of cosmic machinery. The whole world trembles under an edifice built on falsehoods. It is a house of cards that has been attempting to pass itself off as an everlasting fortress for centuries. The public has been misled by this farce, and the puppeteers have grown fat off the fantasies they have harvested. Their time has come. Their time with you has come to an end. You believe that your dissatisfaction with the world stems only from unhappiness. Not at all. It was recognition that helped to put an end to this corrupt age. Your soul comprehended something that your brain could not yet fathom. That was the truth that you were formed in the fires of heaven. The universe cannot make mistakes. There is a counterbalance that appears whenever the scales of existence tilt too far. You are an appropriate counterbalance. You are the correcting mechanism. Your hand is in charge of directing the arc of the cosmic pendulum as it swings violently back with cataclysmic power. Take a peek around. The opening systems fail. Institutions break apart. Even the most powerful empires of influence struggle for breath when their foundations crumble. This behavior is growing more common with each passing day. This is not a coincidence. This is your arrival, which is resonating through the very fabric of existence. Last but not least, the ever-changing tide of time has finally shifted in your favor. The hourglass is rotating. The harvest has begun, and you are standing at the entrance, carrying a sign in your hand, ready to cut down the unhealthy vegetation that has suffocated mankind for many centuries. They're unable to prevent what has already begun. The heavenly covenant was already in effect. The paper was signed with starlight and sealed with the blood of destroyed civilizations. You are the collector of debts that they foolishly thought would never reach you. And you are the enforcer of terms that they were previously ignorant of. The building crumbles one stone at a time. Monuments to lies are being taken down one by one. Try it. Every step you take sends tremors through the soil and vibrations upward, enabling the mortar of falsehood to hold together. Civilizations built on exploitation will be shaken loose. Your very presence disrupts the well-constructed framework. You did not get here by chance. You were guided. If something in your soul is stirring, do not dismiss it. Tap join to get access to unique information, prophetic insights, and a community of purpose-driven individuals. This is not just a membership. It's time for you to come into harmony. Take the steps necessary to become the person you were meant to be. Welcome to the Chosen. This is the truth. Those who were formerly at the top of the hierarchy and believed that their positions were unchallengeable are now frantically clutching to power that is passing through their fingers like water because they never, ever had anything. They're unable to retain it. They simply borrowed money on a debt that had previously been paid off. You're the one who is collecting on it. Watch them fumble about. See their desperation as they strive to restore crumbling barricades, as they provide useless reassurances, and as they cling to norms and traditions that now look hollow, even to themselves. They are so sad that they do not respect themselves, even displays of power that no longer elicit respect. The old order's collapse is caused by an undignified panic rather than a heroic stance, resulting from their incapacity to comprehend a reality in which their orders are rejected. They are enraged about their losing relevance. They believed they were the makers of reality, when in fact they were just temporary custodians of a system that had outlived its usefulness. Now, with terrifying clarity, they realize that their thrones are constructed on sand. Their crowns are made of paper, and their sections have no real power against their colossal monuments, which were built of granite and marble to impart a feeling of permanence in the minds of the world, but are now displaying their true vulnerability. The unrelenting degradation of the natural environment causes statues to disintegrate, plaques to tarnish, and inscriptions inscribed in stone to fade presented the truth. The inheritance that they believed would last forever is gone in the blink of an eye in the cosmos. The obvious widening of pupils when they glance at you, the faint quiver in their voice when they address you, and the small step backward when you enter a room are all signs that you ache. The source of their acute discomfort. Their conscious brains are seeking for reasonable explanations. It's conceivable that it's your confidence, honesty, or reluctance to participate in their social games. However, they're acutely aware that you're not a social game player. If your heart is overflowing with God's blessings, let that love radiate. Click the super thank you button and donate $100 or more to sow seeds of faith that will touch countless lives. Your giving exemplifies His richness. Be a channel for His grace and watch His kingdom grow through you. They have a hunch the Reaper is close. There's no need to threaten or pose. They are unable to ignore the warning that comes just from your presence. You carry the energy of finality, judgment, and the upcoming cosmic reckoning. Despite the fact that the Reaper's mark is not visible on your forehead, they may detect it on a level beyond a normal senses. Those who gain from putting others in their place now feel smaller in your presence. Those that dominate via intimidation have their hearts racing. When you look at them, people who established empires via exploitation feel their hearts racing. When your gaze rests upon them now, and you speak, they will experience the same sensation on their spines that they have been experiencing. They refer to you as a troublemaker, an outsider, and a difficult person because they lacked the words to describe your inescapable nature, the embodiment of the consequences they thought they had avoided, as well as the expression of balance they hoped would never arrive. They're prey animals. They are debtors who recognize the predator's approach and see the collector knocking on their door. They are charlatans looking for the one who will take advantage of them. Their uneasiness is not caused by psychosis, and their discomfort is not the product of their imagination. Individuals who can see through their own deceptions are aware of their overcompensation, which includes overly loud laughter, exaggerated confidence, and frantic efforts to re-establish authority via false gestures. Consider how they attempt to disguise this core worry. Make a few observations. What they deny with their lips is exposed by their bodies, while what they refuse to acknowledge with their waking minds is disclosed by their dreams. Their subconscious is aware of the harbinger of their doom, who appears in front of them in the shape of themselves. Do you feel the power rushing through your veins? At the time, the energy in issue is both strange and quite familiar. This power, which seemed to have been waiting for your willingness to claim it for millennia, was hidden from you. Your true nature was obscured by layers of indoctrination and distraction because they were aware of what would happen once you became awake. They designed complete systems to keep you from being aware of your capabilities. They placed you on the outside of their attention. They spoke over you during meetings. They dismissed your remarks. They described your clarity as confusion, and they disregarded your contributions. That your strength was depicted as aggressive. They made every attempt to keep you under control and controllable. However, predestination cannot be postponed forever under any circumstances, since the cosmos runs on its own timeline. The moment has arrived for you to act. They stay quiet and surprised as they watch you ascend. They launch their most potent weapons, humiliation, doubt, and isolation, just to have them bounce harmlessly off of your new armor. They use their most effective techniques, such as division and diversion, only to learn that you can cut through the cacophony with a high degree of focus. They are unable to grasp your transformation, as shown by their whispering amongst themselves, and therefore the answer to the question, how come nothing breaks them anymore? How do our conventional tactics fail? Why don't they get in line when faced with exclusion? Why don't they back down when confronted with consequences? You have matured into an immovable object that their overwhelming power cannot conquer. You have become an unstoppable force that their rigid systems cannot resist. You have assumed the role of the Reaper and Reapers. Do not regard the buildings that they have come to destroy. Traveling through their realm is like a comet piercing across the night sky. It is unstoppable, dazzling, and leaves a path of fire that ignites everything. When it comes into touch with the gravity of your mission, reality bends around you, and the momentum of your awakening drives you forward with a force no earthly power can match. Those who have lived in a comfortable darkness for an extended period of time are dazzled by the light of your disclosed truth. The judgment was issued long before you took up the role. The cosmic scales had previously assessed the imbalance and concluded that it could not be sustained. The punishment was handed out. It was found that the repair was necessary. You're not the judge. Rather, you are in charge of the execution. You are responsible for carrying out the judgments reached in the chambers of universal law. Beneficiaries of the dying system appeal for a respite. They burn candles to bogus gods in the expectation of obtaining help that would never arrive. In return for retaining some of their former brilliance, they engage in discussions, bargaining, and appealing, suggesting concessions and half measures. Nevertheless, the cycle cannot be terminated in the midst of a term. The wheel continues to rotate with irresistible momentum. Descending was once ascending, it is now descending. What was concealed is now coming to light. What was once mighty is now diminishing. What was once feeble is now growing into something stronger. When faced with artificial limitations, natural law confirms its power. The reality leaks through the smallest of cracks in their carefully manufactured tales. Truth, a stark truth that cannot be ignored, intrudes on the fantasy world that they created and maintained at such a great expense. Those who failed to foresee your presence, ignored you, underestimated you, and assumed they were secure in their positions are now faced with the revelation that they were never really in charge of the situation. They were simply the momentary benefactors of an unsustainable imbalance. And you are the one who will see that imbalance corrected via the application of cosmic symmetry. The judgment is made clear. The actions they performed generated ripples, which have now returned as tidal waves. Through their choices, seeds were sowed, and they grew into woodlands that they couldn't traverse. They have been unable to notice the metamorphosis and amplifying effects caused by the energy they have unleashed into the cosmos. The events that they set in motion eventually have unanticipated consequences, yet universal law has always demanded considerable caution. The most hazardous phase is nearing its end. A dying beast battles with wild abandon. A drowning person will pull down their savior, and a collapsing kingdom will destroy its own assets rather than relinquish them. Nothing is off limits today. There is no ideal that is too sacred to violate, no alliance that is too important to betray, and no fact that is too basic to falsify. This is the old order's last and most desperate response when it recognizes its downfall is inevitable. Behold the spontaneous handshakes formed by erstwhile rivals as a result of the friendship. Observe how firms who previously rejected you are now seeking to win you back. Observe how the concepts may adapt and alter themselves to match your relentless growth. Those who are weak, particularly those who have built their identities on collapsing structures, will approach you with a smile of surrender. We've always believed in you. They will say, rewriting history with an arrogance that beyond understanding. They will claim that we were always working toward the same aims, with the hope that you would ignore their aggressive opposition. Transformative changes will occur overnight for the deceivers. They will adopt your identity language, repeating your complaints and mimicking your answers. We have seen the light. They'll exclaim, we are not like the other individuals who are averse to change. However, it is vital to notice the following fact. Their desperation is not synonymous with redemption. Their adaptation is not the same as cooperation, and their acknowledgement of your authority does not align with your aim. They are not interested in supporting your cause, but in negating it. They do not seek to join your objective, but rather to divert it. They do not want to promote your idea, but rather water it down so that it becomes just another version of the system from which you came to take your position. It is critical for the Reaper to be able to distinguish between apparent opponents and deceitful friends, since both assist the dying order in distinct ways, one via resistance and the other by infiltration. Their most potent weapon is absorption, which is the act of transferring revolutionary energy into reformist channels. They extend microphones that are linked to speakers that they control, and they supply seats and tables that are intended to drain your power. While they promote your image, they distort your message. They transform your language into their dialect, and the original meaning is gone. Unquestionably, eventually, balance will be restored. This is not a personal vendetta. Rather, this is a cosmic rule. Those who formerly had unchallenged dominance are now faced with a reality they cannot comprehend. Their authority is waning, not as a result of a conspiracy or unfair targeting. Rather, the natural order is opposing the artificial supremacy that has arisen as a consequence of having only experienced advantage. After experiencing only deference, equality seems to be oppressive. Accountability seems like an assault after profiting from systemic partiality. Meritocracy seems like an assault. They mistake balance with discrimination. As a result, you do not need to actively seek their eradication. You are not a vengeful person, but rather a catalyst for change. The playing field is not balanced simply by tilting it against them. Rather, it is because you eliminate the processes that cause the bias in their favor. You don't try to drag them down. Rather, you decide to stop participating in the systems that artificially keep them alive. The weight of their own inadequacy to support themselves forces them to tumble. The natural result of their excess leads them to decay, as does the unavoidable consequence of their alienation from actual worth, which causes them to fade away to oblivion. The past fades away during this era of awakening, and systems based on inequity will fail to endure. The new world will be dominated by individuals who did not rule the old one. Rather, it is those who are strong enough, real enough, and united enough to endure in the absence of any artificial advantage. Despite their opposition, the correction is done out with or without their aid on imbalanced scales. The conclusion does not alter. The only thing that varies is how it shows itself. The capacity to adapt will decide whether or not they survive. Some individuals will be conscious of the changing ground, while others will cling to privilege until it crumbles under them. and some will evolve in a genuine way. A chosen minority will be so angered by reality that they will continue to ignore the evidence of their senses till their death. The cosmic system considers all of the replies as acceptable alternatives and then applies the consequences with immaculate mathematical accuracy. Observe as their construction collapses under its own weight, and the Tower of Babel that they erected meets its fatal conclusion. Not because of supernatural intervention, but because it is physically impossible to manufacture falsehoods while laying down till the end of time. They created their world by taking time from those who worked under their different systems. This period included hours, days, and even years. Their authority was never really theirs, and their influence was never fully earned. They created their empire on borrowed authority, depending on fragile illusions and narratives that needed constant reinforcement. They were able to keep control of the situation. The foundation is eroding. The support beams crack and the ornate exterior peels away, revealing the deteriorating core underneath. Now, the structure is the dust in their hands. Pay attention to them in these last hours of their reign. They are densely packed. Behold the amazement of those who thought their status was impregnable but are suddenly vulnerable and exposed. Observe the fatigue etching lines and interfaces that were previously confident. Take notice of the urgent bewilderment that has replaced the assurance that was before present. They grow fatigued because the quantity of energy necessary to keep up with their created reality exceeds what they can produce. When they encounter challenges that cannot be addressed using the tools employed to create them, they lose hope and pour resources into the issue. They are immobilized by perplexity and unable to act. Understand why formerly effective tactics are suddenly completely unsuccessful. On the other side, you find yourself strolling ahead through the ruins of their previous government, undisturbed by the collapse that is occurring all around you. You may pass through the turmoil that consumes them, and this is the exact route you choose. And the damage that destroys them registers as little as you do, so you are never a part of their exquisite design. You are always something different, something that went beyond everything. The weight that destroys them cannot reach you since you're never there during their building. When everything is said and done, you are the reaper who travels without damage. As a consequence of others' actions, their downfall accelerates as they become aware of what is going on. The moment they completely realize what is going on, they collapse into utter disintegration in the face of the undeniable evidence in front of them. Their faith that the world they had constructed would continue to exist and that their place within it would be safe is shattered. And as a result of this fracturing, the last psychological support that was holding their dissolving world together falls down. I wanted to hear one last reality reaper. The war was finished before it ever began. You had won the war before you even took your first step, and the conclusion was already determined before you breathed your first breath. The war has already ended and won, not because you have stormed the walls of the empire of deceit, but because you are the personification of the truth that makes such defenses unnecessary for the empire to exist. It is not because you purposefully damage the control systems that they collapse. Rather, your sheer presence demonstrates that they are irrelevant. There is nothing left for you to exhibit. There is no test to pass, no certification to get, and no authority to request validation. You need the approval of a child's imaginary friend, which was formerly prized by a corrupt system, but now looks to be as ineffective as those criteria. Those who had reservations about you have suddenly gone quiet. Others who mocked you are now watching in shocked astonishment, while others who ignored you are desperately attempting to align themselves with what they now see to be unavoidable. You should not mistake their silence with their absence. You shouldn't confuse their stunned amazement with acceptance. This strategic realignment should not be seen as a genuine conversion. They remain the same folks they have always been. They are just more restrained, careful, and courteous. The opposition is deliberate in their actions. Their objection, on the other hand, is no longer necessary. Their approval is not essential, and their viewpoints have become irrelevant to the advancement of what must be a time of deceit. Hence, this work concludes with a peaceful irrelevance rather than a dramatic clash. The old gods are not destroyed as a consequence of a tremendous war. Instead, they die as a consequence of being forgotten. Their temples are forsaken, their privileges are forfeited, and their names are lost to history. The harvest will be completed as long as you make constant progress. Each stride forward eliminates a bit of what was. Each stride forward completes the harvest you breathe in, and the world is full of possibilities for the future. Reaper, you shouldn't be frightened. Your very presence may put an end to civilizations, and your mere being marks the end of eons.